What is shakin' bacons? I know it has been quite a while, so long that YouTube even demonetized me. If you ever see a creator after being inactive for like a year or whatever, come back and then suddenly put out a video and they're like, "Hey, sorry, it's been," and then they just don't put out another thing for a while. That's typically because YouTube sends you a message saying you're about to be demonetized because you haven't put out anything in 2 years. So YouTube actually demonetized me, and obviously a lot has happened since I posted anything here of substance other than Miss Gingerbread Cookie, a little quick video that basically just I wanted to show you guys I was alive. So I wanted to kind of start a series of audio. I don't think it'd be right calling this a podcast. We can call it a podcast if we want. Warden Cast? Podcast? I don't know. But I wanted to do something because I missed posting here. And I wanted to talk about why I stopped posting. And I believe I had explained this at the time, at this point years ago on the Patreon that I had. But at the time, I had stopped posting here for a couple reasons. The big one is that I was just mentally worn out. I had been burning the candle at both ends basically in my life. My job was incredibly intense. I don't think I've ever gone fully into what I do or what my line of work is on this channel. But as a quick explanation of my job, I was essentially the chief analytics officer at my company, except without the title, because they didn't want to give me the title, and without the promotion or the pay. So I just did everything. I was their data analytics, data science strategist. I deployed data analytics across the company, developed training, wrote strategies. I was that person. So, as you can imagine, it was a lot. And I am no longer at that position, just as a side note, which is a lot better for me health wise, both mentally and physically. And I can go more into my job and what my career is in a future episode if anyone's curious. I might do it anyway, just for my own edification. I like to, I don't mind sharing. But I was definitely my job was super intense. Like there was one time I was doing an analysis for so I was managing people, right? So I was doing an analysis on how what the hours were for people that were working and what their charges were and whatnot. And I remember doing a scatter plot of the employees, and the there were two massive outliers that showed up when I did the analysis, and I was like, "Who on earth are these people?" One of them was a man I had never met, um, which is normal. You can't meet everybody at your job, right? And I worked for a pretty big organization. There was about 5,000 people at my organization, and the other outlier was me. And it turns out that the guy I hadn't met was traveling and he had a bunch of comp time hours because they paid him for travel. So he had a whole bunch of overtime above and beyond his salary. But me, it was just me working my rear end off at my job. So if that tells you guys anything in a massive organization like this, I was the one of the two most hours worked personnel. So I was basically the long story short on that is, I was exhausted from my job. It was a very intense job. And I was also trying to keep up with my personal life, trying to like actually find time to do my laundry at home. And then trying to even maintain my health. Like I have frequently, when I was doing the YouTube and the streaming stuff, I had to choose between taking the time to do that and also like exercising and cooking meals at night, which is crazy to think about because doing movie reviews and TV reviews on YouTube takes a lot of time. It takes way more time than I think people appreciate because you have to watch the movies or the full TV series. Then you have to write the reviews, which takes a while, unless you wing it. And then you have to script the review. Um, at least I did because I would write it and then I would script it so that I would know what I was going to say and it didn't seem like I was just reading a paper to you guys because that's boring. And then I would have to film it, and I'm a slow editor, so editing it always took a while. And the keystrokes and the mouse movements required for editing just destroyed me ergonomically, no matter what I tried to do. So I just could not do everything in my life. And I had to choose between doing this or maintaining my current job, actually trying to maintain my health. So this had to get backburnered for quite a long time. I just couldn't do everything, which kind of segues to why I'm doing this now after so much time. So, one of the big things is that I've left my job, which I mentioned earlier. I'm starting a new job. I'm actually in like a small buffer between jobs right now, which is very much so a relief to just have a period of time where I don't have to do anything. So, at the time I'm recording this, my job will be starting, I'll be starting my new job on the 30th of August. So I'm not sure when I'm going to end up uploading this, but I'll be starting soon, or I may be there already, depending on when I upload this. I'm hoping my new position will not be as draining or as time consuming. I'm definitely taking a step back in what I'm doing. I took the time to identify what it was about my job that actually made me happy and what didn't. And so I targeted work that aligned with what I knew would at least make me happy. And I got an offer from a really, really awesome company, and I'm super stoked about it. So I'm really looking forward to that, actually. It's going to be nice to work with people that are passionate about what they're doing because I haven't had the opportunity to do that in a very long time. So that's going to be very exciting for me. I'm also doing this now, like doing this kind of like audio podcasting thing now because um, working from home as well during this pandemic has helped relieve a lot of stress. So I'm not constantly behind on everything I have to do, right? So I was fortunate enough that I was able to telework during this time period. And I am one of those people, turns out, love telework. Absolutely adore it. I had twice the productivity because as a data person, I tracked my own metrics. I was doubly productive. I was happy. I didn't have to put on that kind of office facade or face that you always have to when you're in an office. I wasn't constantly getting pulled into meetings. Previously my team, so I had put together and managed and run a data analytics center of excellence for my organization. So previously, my team had never been able to reach me because I was constantly getting pulled into meetings. I was never at my desk or at my office. And when I've been teleworking and when they've been teleworking, I am literally just a chat message away. Or they can say, hey, can you share your screen with me in Teams? I need to show you something, or I'm stuck here, or what do you want to do about this customer's deliverable? And I'm able to answer them immediately without any delay. And during this time period, I was able to pivot most of my schedule. So people who constantly wanted meetings before, I started redirecting to email like, hey, can this serve us better as an email so I can actually get this done for you? And that's worked out. It had worked out really, really well. And I was able at the same time, like if I needed to do the laundry during the day, I could just throw in a little laundry quickly and then go back to work. It's super simple. And so I got a lot of time back. My stress levels super decreased. Like I've had documented medical issues vanish over the past year and a half of working from home. And that is something that my doctor has directly attributed to stress and different factors about being in the workspace, like the fact that the organization I worked for had terrible ventilation, so I was constantly breathing in nasty dust and stuff, and which is for real. I went back in to clean out my desk and my office area before I left, and because I hadn't been there in a year and I hadn't been constantly wiping away the dust, there was like a solid thick coating of orangey tan dust over everything. It was disgusting. And so I had just been breathing that in on a daily basis, sitting underneath fluorescent lights on a daily basis, you know, dealing with, I grind my teeth when I'm stressed and I clench my teeth, so I have TMJ. And driving really stresses me out. So I was commuting in and I was super stressed. I did the math on it because I was curious and I ended up saving 30 days of my life by not having to commute to work, which is crazy to me. I got back 30 days of my life. That's crazy. So, and my health got better, like I said. So I've been feeling a lot better. That's the whole point of all this. I hope you guys don't mind that I'm rambling. Um, so I've also wanted to start kind of recording these audio casts because I've missed interacting with you guys and just sharing my thoughts and stuff like this or thoughts on other things. And I'm not going to be able to go back. Like I'd be lying if I told you guys I'd be able to fully go back to doing movie and TV reviews. Like I may be able to give you my quick thoughts on something in the future, but it would be disingenuous of me to promise you that just with full transparency because I can't promise that consistency, especially starting this new job. And I have freed up the time. I have freed up more time than I had, but the fact of the matter remains is I'm still very busy. But I know it's not movie reviews, but I personally have really relied on podcasts last year for almost like a substitute for social interaction. I just really love them. I like to listen to them when I'm doing chores around the house, when I'm working. Not that I've really had to drive anywhere, but if I was driving somewhere, like I've driven to pick up grocery, I've done curbside pickup during this past year. I've listened to podcasts then. It makes driving so much better for me. So I can't give you guys 100% in terms of doing movie reviews and TV series reviews and stuff, but at least I can give you some percent, which is this. And I feel like that's better than nothing, right? If something's worth doing, uh, what is that phrase? Oh, that's such a good quote too. It's like if something's worth doing well, it's also worth doing poorly. Meaning like if something's worth your time to do, even if you do a little bit, you're still doing more than nothing, which is basically my point. So um, again, can't promise. I can't commit to full movie reviews and TV reviews, but I thought this might be kind of fun. And I've missed talking to you guys and sharing my thoughts. So I thought this might be a good compromise. Although I can't promise as well that I'll be able to post even these consistently. But I have some ideas for things I would like to talk about. And you guys are also welcome to post things or questions or whatever you might want me to talk about or address. And that doesn't mean I will talk about them, but I may. So feel free to shoot ideas and respond in the comments or whatever you guys want to do. And so, yeah, so that's why I decided to do this again. I've really missed doing this. I never stopped enjoying doing YouTube or Patreon or streaming. I just could not handle the bandwidth of it at that point in my life, and I still fully can't, but at least I can do this. So, how have I been over the past year? I'm not very communicative as a person on social media. I'm very, as you guys can imagine, as a data person, as a data scientist, I'm incredibly protective of my information. The only reason I really have social media, it was primarily to communicate with you guys. So I haven't really done any updates on social media at all. But obviously, we've had a global pandemic during this past year, and that was a heck of a thing. I'm not gonna lie. I hope you guys are all doing okay and safe. I managed to get through without catching COVID. Um, knock on wood. Knock, knock, knock. Don't want to jinx myself. I actually am very high risk as an individual. I have two different lung diseases. Yay, me. And my husband is immunocompromised from his disease. Those of you who might remember years ago, I mentioned King Bacon has a disease. So he's immunocompromised. I have two lung diseases. So he and I were basically in lockdown for a solid year until we were both able to get the vaccine. So we are vaccinated. We got vaccinated very early because our state identified us as medically qualified because we were very high risk. So we both got the Pfizer shot back in April, had no side effects. Interestingly enough, King Bacon got wiped out by the vaccine. I actually had almost no reaction to it at all. It was weird. Normally, I'm the one who gets just devastated by stuff. Like if my husband and I are exposed to the same germs, at least in the past, he does not get sick. Me, on the other hand, my immune system's like, come on in, fellas. Woo! Free real estate. It's free real estate. So for me, oh, sorry, bud. I just stompled on the cat. Oh, sorry, buddy. I didn't know you were in there. So for me, it was actually incredibly mild. I was very stunned by the fact that it was mild, at least my reaction to it. But that long year, great positives and then like really low negatives. I loved being at home. I felt like I was living life the way that it should be lived, if that makes any sense. Like I didn't feel like I was living to work. Or yeah, I didn't feel like I was living to work. I was able to actually take a walk at lunch and I had more time to exercise and I was able to actually get to know my yard and the animals that live around here, which was really cool. And put out bird feeders. I think I get why there's like this running joke about retired people freaking out and being like spectator sports at bird feeders. And it's not that you just become a bird watcher when you're older. I think it's just like, oh, I have time to actually see and get to know all the animals on my property. And that's a really cool thing to be able to experience. So I was able to do that, which was really cool. And I really loved working from home. But the flip side was the mental stress of this pandemic. And it's been a lot. I don't need to tell all of you that it has been a lot. And I definitely struggled with some very dark thoughts during this time period that I got myself like a sad lamp to help out with that. I sat in front of the sad lamp for hours every day and I tried to keep positive, but it felt really surreal, didn't it? Like I kept waking up thinking, we're in a global pandemic. We're in a lockdown. And it was so bizarre to me because it was just like an apocalyptic movie, except we were living it. And as I am a millennial, as a millennial, I was like, how how many how many like global destroying events am I going to live through? I think it's been like three economic recessions now and a global pandemic on top of everything else. And then plus the world just feels like it's melting down and climate change is just insane. And I was really hoping that people would kind of realize and see and take to heart all the changes, like the positive changes that happened to our planet when we all locked down and we were trying to get a grip on this pandemic, like how people could actually see the Himalayan mountains again, and dolphins went back to the canals in Italy, and the air cleared up over California. And actually, what was crazy to me, which I never saw anybody talking about, I just thought it was so cool. There was geo geological scientists actually recorded seismological changes in the earth because I guess humans and their vehicles generate so much noise that it actually has a baseline seismic movement that it imparts to the earth. And from the point that the lockdowns began, they actually recorded a dramatic cessation of constant seismic activity from from people not driving all day, every day. And that was just wild to me. I was really hoping that that would change a lot of opinions of people like, hey, we can fix climate change and we can do all of this and we can, try and preserve the one planet we can exist on in this galaxy. And so far, it doesn't seem like that's the case. And that's kind of disheartening. So I've just been wrestling. I wrestled for a while with depression over the situation with the pandemic and depression about my job and how overworked I was and concern about our planet, basically. And then in the middle of the COVID and lockdown, December, it was either like December 1st or December 3rd, we lost Sir Champion Floofy Pants, and he was probably the best cat that I have ever owned. And he was like a child to us. He was almost like a dog in a cat's body. Just he would do tricks for us. He just wanted to cuddle with us at all times. He would greet us at the door. He'd wag his tail. He just wanted to be with us. He was honestly he was like our child. And we had rescued Champy. He had a level 4 out of 5 heart murmur, and nobody wanted him. And so we rescued him with the understanding from the vet at the time when he was a kitten that he could drop dead any moment. And that was something that they really imparted and stressed to us. And we were fortunate enough to have 6 wonderful years with him. And his heart failed in December. It was just like the cap on such a terrible year. It was devastating and it was really unexpected. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. So that was really hard. And and then this year, most recently, I had a major health scare. Actually, I ended up in the ER. I went to the doctor for what I thought was an ear infection. Went in, and the doctor examined me fully, listened to my symptoms, and told me, "You need to go to the ER now. I think you have something growing in your brain." And I was sitting in her office, and it felt like an out of body experience because I was like, "It's not an ear infection." And she just looked at me and she was like, "No." And I was grasping for anything. I was like, "Is it meningitis? Is it COVID?" And she just looked at me and she just shook her head. And it was like the most pitying, gentle look on her face. And she was like, "No, you need to go to the ER." And so for those of you who are curious, I will tell you what my symptoms are, because in retrospect, they are very much so are the symptoms of a brain tumor. So I had an increasing feeling of pressure on the right side of my head, not constantly. It would get worse when I would bend over, like if I was picking up something or putting on shoes. Basically felt like in a horror movie, you see hands like pushing through the wall. It was like somebody was just pushing on the inside of my skull trying to get out. And that point of pressure where it felt like somebody was pushing, there was this spreading numbness across my face. My hearing was muffled on that side. I was seeing like sparkles occasionally, so I guess they call that an aura. I was seeing an aura occasionally. I was having problems sleeping, but I was incredibly tired. Like I had no energy to do anything. I had an insane brain fog. I was forgetting words. My husband was getting really worried because he would be asking me things and I just wouldn't know the word. Like he'd ask me what the time was and I would tell him I'd be looking at my watch or looking at the clock and I'd be going, um it's it's got the number 2, and he's like, "It's 2 o'clock," and I'd be like, "Yeah, that's it." Just my brain just was not working for some reason. And I was getting this weird feeling of lead in my stomach, and I was kept getting incredibly lightheaded. There was a couple times I almost passed out, and it was pretty bad. I was having a really, really rough time. So she sent me to the ER. Well, she told me to go to the ER, and I managed to keep myself together. I told her, I said, "I don't know if my insurance will." She's like, "You need an MRI now, like today." And I told her, "I don't know if my insurance will cover that." And she was like, "You need to go to the ER." And I said, "I need to go and call my insurance." So I remember I walked out to the car and I sat in the car and I just had this meltdown in the car. And then I waited until I was able to stop the meltdown and I could see to drive. And I managed to make it home. And our garage is underneath the house. And I remember walking up the steps, and my husband was at the top of the steps, and he was waiting to say hi to me. And he was thinking I was going to be like, "Oh, honey, I have an ear infection." And I got to tell him I may have a brain tumor. I have to go to the ER. And I just watched him age like 2 years in front of my face. His face just went gray. And then I collapsed again. And then as I was collapsing, the nurse from the doctor's office called me and said, "The doctor wanted me to make sure you're going to the ER." And I said, I have to call my insurance because I can't afford a $10,000 MRI bill if it's not covered. She said, you need to go. And I said, I will call my insurance right now. So I called my insurance hotline, and the insurance hotline, the woman, oh my gosh, the cat just knocked over my sad lamp. You're feisty today, aren't you? So I called my insurance. They were like, just go to the ER. If you go to the ER, if your doctor's telling you to, it's counted as a medical emergency and we'll cover it. So I was on my way to the ER, and then my doctor called me and said, "Are you going to the ER?" And I was like, "Yes, I am on my way to the hospital." So went to the hospital, went through the rigmarole. They gave me a CAT scan, a CT scan, and the doctor, on the on-call doctor at the ER came out to me and he said, "I have the results of your CAT scan. There's nothing immediately that jumps out to us. You would need an MRI to know for sure, but where do you live?" And so I told him the town that I lived in my state, and he said, "Your town has the highest rate of Lyme disease in the state." And he said, "Have you had any tick bites?" And I sat there and I was like, "What?" Because I had had a bug bite about 3 or 4 weeks before, and I hadn't paid any attention to it. I remember telling my husband, like, "Oh, I've got this weird bug bite, but it's not itchy. It's just like a large red welt or rash." But it never itched, and I didn't pay any attention to it. And the the ER doctor, sorry, I'm just smooching on my cat. I don't know if you guys could hear that kiss noise. That was just me. That was just me smooching the cat. He's up here making mischief. The ER doctor told me, he said, sometimes Lyme disease, some variants of it, can perfectly mirror brain tumors. I'm going to test you for Lyme disease. So he sent off my panels for Lyme disease and they ran more tests. And the test that came back showed I had low white blood cells, low red blood cells. I had something else flagged that could be cancer. So there was this horrible 2 week period where I was just waiting on test results to get back. They finally came back negative for Lyme disease, but I was still having issues. So my doctor had been waiting for those results. So I had another couple visits with her and she said, "I'm going to test you again." She was thinking it was a side effect or something from the vaccine, but she and I were both confused. She had not known that Lyme disease could cause those symptoms, and she and I were both really confused because I hadn't, the only other thing that my symptoms matched were either brain tumor or brain cancer, which would, I guess, would partially be a tumor unless it was a benign tumor. Or she was like, maybe it could be a reaction to the vaccine called, I don't know, what was it, PMR? I don't remember it because that's not what it ended up being. It was like PMR or something, but she was like, it couldn't be that because you got the vaccine so long ago. So that doesn't make any sense. So she said, "I'm going to test you again." So there was another round of tests that I had to go through for other tick-borne diseases, and they also came back negative. And in the meantime, I was doing research on this, and apparently the standard test that they give you for this, A, like I think only 47% of the time are they actually correct. And then B, if you take them early enough in your infection, your body hasn't generated enough antibodies for it to actually show up in your blood. And they do a blood test for Lyme disease. So I told her, I was like, "Listen, this is what I'm seeing. All of my symptoms match, including other symptoms of other health issues that I've had that I didn't know were related, so I didn't talk to you about." And I said, I really think it's this. And she wanted to put me on a steroid to treat me just in case it was this vaccine reaction. And meanwhile, as I've been reading about stinking Lyme disease, it says steroids are the absolute worst thing you can take if you have Lyme disease because steroids suppress your immune system. And you basically make your body like if Lyme spirochetes or spirochetes or however you say it come into your body and they're like, "Oh, look, it's a I don't know what would a good analogy. It's a nice turkey dinner for me." if you take steroids and you wipe out the immune system, it's basically like you've given the parakeets a red carpet up to an all-you-can-eat buffet in your body. And I told her, I was like, this is what I'm seeing. The tests are really inconclusive. If the bite is early enough, I may not be showing antibodies, and that's why I'm showing negative. And if you give me steroids, you could make it way worse. I'm not discounting that it could be this other thing, but I think it would be better in the long run to treat me as if I have Lyme disease because I have basically all of the symptoms at this point. I've had a bite, I've had a rash, I've got all of these symptoms rather than you give me a steroid and I just get exponentially worse. And it goes on too long to be cured and it becomes chronic. So she agreed, thank God. And she said, we're going to treat you prophylactically for Lyme disease. So she gave me doxycycline and I went on doxycycline and within like 2 days, I had all of my symptoms got, I would say, triply worse. I was in bed with cold packs on my head in the fetal position because it felt like where I was having the pressure in my head, it felt like somebody was just hammering a spike through my head. My neck was stiff. I couldn't move. Like I was basically comatose for a solid day or two. And then it all went away and I felt 100% better. Every single symptom I have had was completely gone. Completely gone. And it's so crazy to me because they thought I had a brain tumor and it was stinking Lyme disease. And it's so wild. Like, oh, thank God it was not a brain tumor. But it's so crazy to me that a bug and the spirochetes inside it could cause that much havoc in a body. Like, that's just crazy to me, man. So it was about a month before we finally figured out what it was. And if the ER doctor had not known, had not known that Lyme disease could mirror brain tumors, and then I hadn't looked into it and been like, oh, steroids make it way worse. Also, the tests are super unreliable, then I might still be having these problems. They might still think I would have a brain tumor. They might still be trying to figure out, oh, we don't know what's wrong with you. And my doctor still will not admit to me that it was Lyme disease. She's like, you still tested negative. Maybe you just had something else. And it's like, well, I had a bite, I had a rash, I had all the symptoms. And it was early enough in the infection that the studies from the CDC and the NIH all say that it's inconclusive. You can't seriously tell me that you don't think that's what I had. But she refuses to believe it was Lyme disease. So, but at any rate, it wasn't a brain tumor, but it was a horrible health scare. It took over a month to resolve. I ended up in the ER July 2nd. It was a wonderful holiday weekend. Heavy sarcasm intended. I did not find out that that I had Lyme disease, and I didn't get treated for it until, let's see, August 6th. It's almost a month later. I finally was on medication. So that was fun. So that was my health scare. It was a really bad health scare. I hope sincerely, for the sake of all of you, that you have A, never experienced this, and B, never have to experience sitting in a doctor's office being told you might have a brain tumor. Because that to date has been probably one of the worst experiences that I think I have ever had in my life. It was incredibly unpleasant. So, do not recommend. So, that's basically what's been going on with me throughout this lockdown. Decided to change jobs, had some health scares, lost my best boy, basically existed for a year and a half in like this weird. That past year felt like a liminal space, didn't it? Almost like when you're in an airport waiting between flights, like it almost didn't exist somehow. I don't know, man. It was weird. But anyway, that's what's been going on with me. I'm definitely going to try and do more of these. I am going to try to write and then pre-record a couple. When I say write, I mean just basically outline what I'm going to say. Some of them for sure I'll just kind of riff on, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But if you guys ended up listening to this whole thing, thanks for listening if you did listen. And I'll catch you later, Bacons. I'm glad to be back.